Hey guys, in this lesson, we're going to get you up and running with your local environment. So whether that be with Atom or with VS Code or whichever text editor you prefer to use, and get you started creating apps locally on your computer. This way, if you prefer using a local text editor rather than using a code sandbox like what we've been doing so far, you'll have all the tools you need to get started when we're creating your project, the Google Keeper app. If you're using a Mac, you can go ahead and skip this lesson and head over to the next one where I walk you through exactly the same thing, but for setting up on a Mac computer. Let's get started. There's only 4 steps that are required to start creating React apps on Windows. First, we've already got Node installed, and if you've gone through the Node modules recently, then your Node version is probably going to be pretty up to date. But just in case it's been a while since you've actually tackled the Node module of the course, then it might be worthwhile just checking that it's actually up to date. So how do we do this? If you head over to nodejs.org and you take a look at the version that's shown over here on the left, as of right now, when I'm recording, the latest version shown to me is 12.13.0. And this is the version that you want to be working on. This is the stable version. So how do you know if you have the latest version? Well, to check that you've got the latest version installed, go ahead and open up your hyperterminal and type in the command node --version and then hit enter. And you can see that what I'm getting back is that I'm running version 12.13.0, which is the same as what I'm seeing on the Node.js website. So that means I am up to date. Now, if on the other hand, you see a lower version, or if you see something like command not found or something that basically suggests that you don't have the latest version of Node installed, then I recommend just clicking over here and downloading the latest installer for the Node 12.13 or whatever it may be when you're looking at this lesson. Now, if you don't know what the hyperterminal is, we've already gone through this in the command line module, and I've talked about a lot of these commands like changing directory and instructing your computer to do certain things. And we're going to be using the command line quite a lot. So the command line module is definitely essential knowledge, and I recommend completing it before you proceed any further. So once that's done, go ahead and open it up. And then we'll just run through the wizard very quickly to accept all the licenses and get it installed. And then after you've installed it, restart your computer and open up the hyperterminal again to check and make sure that you've got the latest version installed. Now, the reason why we need Node is because we're going to be installing packages when we're using React. As you've seen already, we've been using the React and React DOM modules, and the easiest way to install those to any project is just using npm. Now, if you've missed out on the Node module of the course, I strongly recommend completing that first before tackling React, just because there's a lot of concepts that's already covered there, and it might be a little bit confusing if you just get started with React straight away. So now that you've made sure you've got the latest version of Node, we can now move on to step 2, which is to install VS Code. Now, VS Code is a free and open source code editor, and it's a really popular one for using with React. Now, if you want to use a different one, say if you want to stick with Atom, or if you want to use something like Sublime, or whatever it is that you would prefer to use, that's totally fine. It doesn't actually matter. At the end of the day, it's just whatever makes you feel comfortable and whichever styling or environment you prefer. But if you have no preferences and you want to work on React locally, then I recommend giving Visual Studio Code a go. It's pretty easy to install. Simply just head over to code.visualstudio.com, click on this button, and go through the wizard to install it onto your computer. And once you've got it installed and opened, it should look something like this. A lot of the user interface looks very similar to what we've been working with in Code Sandbox. But no matter which editor you choose, I recommend heading over to this link here, which I'll link to in the course resources, and finding your particular editor, be it Atom or Vim or Visual Studio Code, and install the extension that they ask you to. This way you'll get the correct syntax highlighting, and it'll make it much easier to see what's going on when you're writing JSX code that's being interpreted by Babel. In Visual Studio, the package is called Sublime Babel by Josh Peng. And in order to install it, just head over to File, Preferences, Extensions, or use the keyboard shortcut. And then once you're on this page, go ahead and search for Sublime Babel. And this is the one we want. So click on Install, and it should take a few seconds to install. And this is basically the same as the Atom packages. Now, in addition, I recommend getting the VS Code icons extension. And what this does is it just adds the icon to any of the files that you have in your browser. So that way, files with different extensions are labeled with different icons. And it makes it very similar to what we've been used to in Code Sandbox. And it's really easy to navigate when you're working with React apps. Now that we're done with step 2, installing VS Code, or simply just adding a package that you saw in the Babel website to whichever text editor you prefer, then we can move on to step 3, which is to actually create a React app. And to do this, we're going to follow the instructions from the React website. So again, I'm going to link to this page, and this is one of the easiest ways of creating a brand new React app. So we have to do it in the terminal. So go ahead and copy this instruction to create your first app. Now, this is the npx command, which is, as they say, a package runner tool that comes with npm, and it will install Create React App on your computer so that you can create new React apps from scratch. And then the very last part is whatever it is that you want to name your app. So let's just go ahead and copy it as it is to create a project called My App. And then simply paste it in here. And then hit enter for it to go ahead and run the code. And you'll see that it's created a new React app under this particular file path. So users, and then my username, and then my app. And now it's going to install the required packages, which includes React, React DOM, and React scripts. Now, React script we haven't used so far, but it's basically the scripts that's required to actually be able to run React apps locally on your computer. Now, the first time that you run this command, npx create React app, and you try to generate a new React app, it's going to take a while. So I counted, and on my Windows 10 machine, it took something like 5 minutes. But once it is done, though, you will get something like this. Success, created my app at this location, and inside that directory, you can run several commands. npm start to start the server, build to build the React app into a production app that you can launch, and a couple of other things. So now that we've completed 1, 2, and 3, all we have left is to run our app. And as the instructions suggest, all we have to do is to cd over to my app and then run npm start. So let's go ahead and cd over to the location of our app. And if you need reminding where that is, simply scroll up to the success message and you can see that it's created, in my case, in the C drive in this location. So I'm going to navigate to this using the bash format. So I'll add the cd, change directory, and then it's going to be a / to represent the root directory. Then it's the C drive, then it was users / p.d, and then it was / my -app, and then hit enter, and you can see we've now moved into the my app directory, and it's here where we're going to run the command npm start and hit enter. And this is going to use that module React scripts to run a script and open up the app. So you might get some warnings like this from Windows Firewall. Just be sure to click Allow Access if you see any of these. And once it's loaded up, you'll see localhost being opened up in your browser of choice. And if you get stuck at any point along the way, I recommend checking out the React support page because there's a lot of discussion forums, especially the React to Flux online chat, which is on Discord, which has a lot of helpful people who are really, really knowledgeable, and they can help you if you get stuck along the way installing React or trying to get it to work on your local system. This is all that we have for our app at the moment. And in order for it to show something else, we're going to have to edit our source/app.js file. So let's go into our VS Code and open up that folder and navigate to it again. So here it is, under the C drive, users /my username /my app, and then select folder to open it up inside VS Code. And now you can see that my app is showing right here. So let's go ahead and close the welcome screen and hide this as well. And now we can see our app showing up over here. If we go into the source folder and the public folder, you can see there's lots of files that have been pre-packaged in here. And what I recommend is that while you're up and running and getting used to React is to actually just delete everything that's not necessary. All of these logos which are being used and the robots text, which is for Google search to index your website, all of these things are unnecessary and they clutter up our starting file. So I'm just going to select them and then just simply delete them. Inside our source folder, the only ones that we want to keep is the index.js, and we're going to delete everything else. So now we've got a very similar format to what we've seen before in our code sandbox, and you can actually apply everything you've learned so far to this code. So the index.html has a lot of comments and a lot of things already in here, but we can actually delete all of these things while we're learning, like the theme color or the viewport or the icons for the favicon. These are nice to have when we actually deploy our website, but right now we don't need a favicon. We just need to learn how to use React. So we've already got our div with the ID of root in here, and we're going to change that script to be the one that we've got in our source. So we're going to use the /src/index.js. And by the way, if the font is too small for you, you can change it in preferences, settings, and the font size here. So let's go ahead and mark this script as type equals to text/JSX. And let's head back into our index.js and delete all of these imports other than our React and React DOM, and then delete all of this code at the bottom as well. So we end up with what we are familiar with. Now, instead of rendering an app, let's just test it out by rendering out an H1 from scratch, a single element, and let's just say hello world. And let's hit save. Go back to our localhost 3000 and you should see it update. And at this stage, you should be pretty familiar with how to manipulate things using what we learned in the previous lessons while we were working in the sandbox. It's your choice whether if you want to use the local environment to run your app on your localhost 3000, or if you want to continue using the code sandbox while we create our project, the Google Keeper app. This decision I'm going to leave up to you because it's a personal preference. But in the next lesson, we're going to get started building out our Keeper app project. So for all of that and more, I'll see you there.